All right, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says it's not easy to agree on a deal with the U.S. on ending Moscow's war against Ukraine.
Yeah, President Trump has repeatedly said he wants a swift end to the three-year war, but talks between American and Russian diplomats have not yielded any key results yet. President Trump's foreign envoy, Steve Witkoff, however, remains optimistic.
We might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region, too. Partnerships create stability.
But Lavrov tells Russian media that it may be too soon for Moscow to think about normalizing relations with the U.S.
Yeah, CNN's senior military analyst James Stavridis joins us live now. Stavridis is a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and a partner at the Carlyle Group, a global investment firm. Thank you so much for being with us. So we're seeing this sort of division, some daylight in terms of what the Russian messaging is right now, and also what the likes of Steve Witkoff is saying. Sergei Lavrov essentially saying that it's not necessarily going to be easy to agree to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine, but the Americans are, at least publicly, saying that they remain optimistic. How optimistic are you that we're going to see any kind of ceasefire deal at any point in the near future?
I have optimism, Zain, but it's increasingly turning into hope as opposed to a rational indicator of what's going to happen. If you forced me to put a number on it, I'd say there's maybe, at best, a better than even chance that we get to a ceasefire probably toward the end of this year. And why I am concerned is what you heard from Sergei Lavrov, who has been around Putin throughout his life and career in power. I know Lavrov well. He's a pretty clear-eyed communicator. And I think when he says, we're not ready, translation, we're going to continue to grind away militarily, try and improve their position before we get to negotiations. All of that will require Washington to put real significant pressure on Russia, directly on Putin from Trump. Until that happens, I fear that Envoy Witkoff's optimism is perhaps not real until we can get more pressure on Russia.
Admiral, without that pressure, how is Moscow reading the president's reactions here? Time and time again now, I believe this is their second meeting in a few months between Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin. Right after these meetings, you see another horrific attack, a strike on Kyiv by Russians, killing innocent civilians. And the president of the United States just asked about this latest over the weekend in Sumy on Palm Sunday, where children were killed again, and he described it as terrible and said Russia made a mistake, and then went on to criticize President Zelensky for constantly coming and asking for more military equipment, and even suggesting once again that somehow Ukraine started this war. When these are the headlines coming out of the White House, how are they received in the Kremlin?
Oh, with high fives. I mean, this is exactly what they would hope for, is an interlocutor in Washington who understates the level of their criminality. And make no mistake, an attack like this that they conducted in Moscow, that you're showing on the right side of the screen, that's a war crime. That is going after civilians. There were, as far as I can tell, no significant military figures there. I don't think that's a mistake. I think it's a war crime. The only consolation I can take is that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and one of the key negotiators for the United States, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who is handling the Ukraine side of the portfolio while Witkoff handles the Moscow side. General Kellogg and Secretary of State Marco Rubio both criticized Russia very strongly. I wish the president would get on board with his advisors.
So explain why he doesn't, because just as Biana was saying there, this idea of saying that, oops, you know, it appears that Russia made a mistake with this attack on Sumy, you know, blaming Zelensky for coming back and constantly asking for more, and then also just sort of intimating that Ukraine started this war. I think the exact words were something, and I'm paraphrasing here, like, why would you start a war with somebody 20 times your size, is what the president said at the White House yesterday. So explain that strategy, because it's not having a necessary, the intended effect of bringing Putin that much closer to the negotiating table.
Yeah, the best and most charitable explanation you could give, and I don't buy this, would be by working with Russia and trying to maintain open and friendly communications with Putin. Somehow we will pull them toward us and get them to the table and conduct a negotiation. I think it's a failed strategy. And frankly, it harkens back to the first Trump administration. When you saw Trump personally, for example, at the Helsinki summit, refused to stand with his own intelligence apparatus in criticizing Russia for interfering in our elections. He was clearly trying very hard to have this positive relationship with Putin. I don't think it's a good strategy. It's not working. And his own advisors are going to continue to undercut him. Over time, he's going to find Putin is no friend of the United States. Putin is a master manipulator who is going to try and do everything he can to ultimately conquer Ukraine. Why? Because of the good old-fashioned reason that he wants the resources. He wants 40 million Ukrainians. He wants the breadbasket of Europe. He wants the oil and gas. He is going to maintain focus on locking that down until we firmly and completely call his bluff. Let's hope the president begins to do that.
Right, Admiral Lyfros there, thank you so much.